Hello my friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another Wheel of Time spoiler chat as I work my way through the series. Today we are going to be talking about The Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan, book 10 in the Wheel of Time. So that marks me as, I guess, like 2/3 of the way through, which is exciting. And the other thing that's exciting is that this is widely recognized as the final book in the slog. So we've got some things to talk about with regards to Crossroads of Twilight, but first and foremost, I am excited to be finished with that era and moving into what people widely consider to be where the series ramps back up as things ramp up and get ready to close out this absolutely epic series. So let's just get right into what I'm going to say about Crossroads of Twilight. So for those of you who follow me on Goodreads, which is always linked in my description by the way, you will have already seen my rating for this book, which was 2 stars, and I think that the major reason for this rating is because while the other books in the slog have had slow pacing and have had interesting things happening in them still, the big difference for me between books like 7, 8, and 9, arguably 7, because I don't personally feel like 7 is really part of the slog, those books at least had endings, resolutions, and climaxes, where I really don't feel like Crossroads of Twilight had that. The one thing that I will say for it is that you can feel the tension increasing throughout this book, but that almost makes it worse in a way, because you can feel the tension increasing as pieces are moved into place for the final run of books, but along with that, you really, in my opinion, get no resolution at the end of this book, so you're kind of left hanging. But like I said, there were still some interesting things happening throughout this book with various characters, so let's talk about those. And before I get into that, the one overarching theme for a lot of the perspectives through this book that I wanted to mention is that everyone can feel like the tower of the source that was being drawn by Rand and Nynaeve in order to cleanse the male half of the One Power at the end of Winter's Heart. So that's interesting because that goes to show us that the events at the start of this book are happening concurrently with what was happening at the end of Winter's Heart, and nobody knows yet. The ending of Winter's Heart hasn't actually happened yet, because everyone that can channel can feel this and is basically panicking because they don't know what is going on. Only Rand and his kind of accompanying characters actually know what the heck is happening. So everyone else in the world is kind of scared. So let's start right at the beginning with the prologue. And the overarching thing that I can say about the prologue is that we're moving pieces into place, because the prologue follows something like 7 different character point of views, and it takes up over 10% of the book. So I've said this before in other Wheel of Time books, but in a way I understand what Robert Jordan does with his prologues, because we get all this out of the way and then we move into the main timeline of the book, if you will, but he doesn't know what a prologue is. What is a prologue that is 85 pages? That's not a prologue. Why can't you just make those the first chapters of the book? Anyway, I have a little bit of beef with that, but the fact that we follow so many characters in the prologue, we're really just, like I said, we're getting a read on where certain people are, what they're doing, so that we can at least say that we've checked in with them and we know that these things are happening, and then they'll become relevant later. So for me, the 3 most interesting perspectives in the prologue were Yukiri, and she's interesting because she's part of the hunt for the Black Aja inside the White Tower. So I like checking in with them and what they're doing, and the cool thing about that is that it connected with Alviarin later in the book, because she is put back in her place by Elaida, and then she is tasked by maybe actually the Dark One. I don't know if I believe that she actually spoke to the Dark One, but he giving her the task of rooting out whoever is hunting the Black Aja in the tower and getting rid of them. And I can feel all of that coming to a boil, and I am actually very interested in that, like in the politics between the Aes Sedai who are actually physically in the White Tower. Then the other two interesting ones are Samitsu, who is the Aes Sedai who is really good at healing, and she is dealing with things in Cairhien, and she doesn't want to let Cadsuan down. She's supposed to have a handle on things in Cairhien, and she really feels like she doesn't. And so I always find everything to do with Cadsuan pretty interesting because of her status as a legend and how everyone else reacts to her, so this fits in with some of that. And then we also have Gabrel, which I find that perspective interesting because I like kind of in the intricacies of what's going on with the Black Tower, what's going on with the Ashaman who bonded these Aes Sedai, and like also what's going on with Logain, because I like Logain. I don't know how to feel about him, but he intrigues me. So I like seeing him through the bond, through the perspectives of these Aes Sedai that he has bonded, and then obviously we see him again later in the book too, which I will get back to when I talk about Rand. So now that we've gotten past the prologue, let's talk about each of the main storylines. So I'm going to start with Egwene, and in my opinion, even though she had a lot of actual content in this book, for me, she was a victim of the whole like interesting things happen, but they have no resolution. She is the best example of that for me. Actually, no, Elayne, maybe. But nevertheless, Egwene and the rebel Aes Sedai who are besieging Tervalan, they are basically talking about how they might approach Elaida, or how they might, like, it's very clear that everyone, Egwene included, wants to heal the White Tower, but neither side wants to give any ground either. So I thought it was interesting that they discussed how to approach it and maybe how to have talks with Elaida, which they don't really want to do, but they also do want to do. I don't know. All the currents between Aes Sedai are interesting to me in this, like in Egwene's part of the camp. And I actually really enjoy seeing the politics of the Hall of the Tower and their reactions to the thought of approaching the Black Tower for an alliance, perhaps. And I can see that some of this would be really boring if you weren't interested in it, but luckily I actually do like watching that because I'm invested in how Egwene is going to do, and so I feel like I'm more in tune to the Aes Sedai that accompany her. Like, I'm able to more easily remember who they are and who they're aligned with, and like I said, I really actually enjoy watching them do all of their politicking. I think part of it is because you can tell that there's an undercurrent of danger and tension about the whole thing, and this ties back to my theory about Halima and Egwene's headaches, and I call it a theory. Based on the evidence that we've been given, this could already be all but confirmed, but I kind of have a bad memory. So if this has been confirmed already, you can let me know, but if it has not been confirmed yet, then like no spoilers, please. But my theory about the whole like situation with Egwene's headaches and Halima, and then eventually Aes Sedai in these camps dying, is that Halima is causing Egwene's headaches in order to heal them, and then in order to have Egwene be dependent on her and allow her to like sleep in her tent, be near her, etc. Because it's mentioned that when Egwene lets Halima heal her headaches, sometimes she has weird untroubled dreams, but there's also a mention somewhere in the book of Egwene being a little bit like dismissive or rude maybe to Halima, and then her headache gets worse. So like when Halima is displeased, it seems like she can make the headaches worse. At least that's what I'm connecting the two of them together. And then the other thing is that in an earlier book, I'm sure that it was mentioned that a male Forsaken was walking away from the rebel Aes Sedai camp with bodies in their arms, and I'm sure we've seen that one of the Forsaken has changed their gender identity, like changed their expression, I guess. Like, and the reason I say gender expression is because it's been confirmed later in the book that the Aes Sedai dying in the camps are being killed with the male half of the power, and the reason So my theory is that Halima is the male Forsaken, and that if the Forsaken is originally male, it doesn't change the side of the power that you draw on, but then nobody would suspect Halima because Halima is a woman. So it's a very good disguise in that sense, I guess. That sounds silly when I say it like that. But anyway, that's my theory about her, because we know that she's suspicious. And then we also know that Delena, like her Aes Sedai, or the one that she works for, is either suspicious or is being coerced or something like that. My memory on when she first arrived is a little fuzzy, but that is one of the most interesting things, because there's an undercurrent of tension when you think about that, and this also could be the person who betrayed Egwene to the tower at the end of the book. There are some interesting things going on with Egwene, but even though she was betrayed at the end and captured, and you might be like, Grace, that's a climax, I didn't feel it building up to that. It felt like that happened very suddenly, and then the book ended. And that's just a me thing maybe, but it wasn't the best pacing ever. The other two things I want to mention with Egwene is, for one, she mentions to other Aes Sedai to them potentially retiring as members of the kin and being unbound from their oaths. And then they're learning how to make Quendalar, I think. Is that what they're making in the camp? So that could definitely have some implications, and that could also be part of why she was betrayed to the White Tower. I'm not sure, because that's what she was trying to do when she was captured. So that could be unrelated, that it could just be that they knew that she would be there, not the why. But yeah, so Egwene did have some interesting things happen, I will give her that, and I do love Egwene. So next up we have Perrin, Faile, and Elayne, and kind of that whole group of people that are in the same location as them. And first we kind of start off with Perrin tracking Darkhounds, and I don't really know if that was just to create some tension or whether they're going to come back and have some relevance later, but I felt like that could have been more interesting. Like, it seems like they just passed them by. Maybe that's supposed to be a little bit of a mystery for us, I'm not sure. But then we kind of have Elayne continuing to weaponize her sexuality with Perrin and allowing people to think that he slept with her, like after Faile was taken. And I don't love that about Elayne, the way that that's being done, because I can't figure out the purpose of it. Like, for example, when she pretends to flirt with him and says, like, if we're flirting, people won't think that we're talking about something else. I get that, because that, you can look at it and be like, okay, that has an actual, like, visible strategy to it. But like, cultivating the belief that Perrin cheated on his wife with her and then allowing people to think that, I can't find in my brain the logic and the reasoning behind that, which is why I don't like it, because I think that it's just her sexuality being, like, malicious for the point, or for the, like, just for the sake of it, and I don't love that. I will say, though, that I actually like Perrin and Faile better apart right now than I did when they were together, because Faile in the camp, making do with the other women and trying to find ways to escape, is actually really interesting. And the fact that they are kind of under the shadow of Galena because she wants them to steal the oath rod for her. I do find all that stuff really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Faile does and if she kind of, like, does what she has to do in order to get out, and how that's going to play out. And obviously the Shido are a very formidable enemy, so we'll see what happens there. But in terms of, like, emotionally, I don't care too much for the Shido. So at the very end of the book, when there's a proposed truce or, like, alliance with the Shan-Chan in order for Perrin to defeat the Shido, that interests me, because the Shan-Chan are slowly wiggling their way into more things, and I'm really, really intrigued to see how that meshing is eventually going to take place, because they are going to need each other's help if they're all going to fight the last battle. So we'll see. Next up, we have Elayne, who, like I kind of mentioned earlier, she doesn't do overly much for advancing the plot in this book. It's more just her continuing to try and secure her place on the Lion Throne and trying to, like, basically strengthen her claim to be queen, but I do enjoy following her, Aviendha, Brigitte, and Elayne, and I kind of like the progress that she personally is making because Elayne brings 4 more houses to support her cause. The heads of these houses are teenagers, which is just like kind of funny and has some potential for interesting interactions in the future, and the fact that Elayne kind of has a bargaining session with the Windfinders and holds her own and actually kind of gets what she wants. I feel like I was personally proud of Elayne in this book, and I like following her as a character, even if a lot of the stuff that she's doing is keeping her in the same location and is more politicking than it is like actually out moving the plot forward. I'm still okay with following Elayne. But the other couple of things with Elayne is that her first maid, or I forget her actual title, but she is continuing to root out spies in the palace and also potentially use them for their own ends. And they are also strategically trying to combat their rivals from outside the city because they've taken out huge loans with the bank, so they could be planning to pay off the mercenaries that Elayne has in her employ, and there's always that possibility. So Brigitte is going to try and like randomize their schedules so that they can't plan to betray a gate or anything like that. And there's also the captain of Elayne's guard, who is a dark friend and goes to have a meeting with other dark friends where they ask him to basically cause chaos in the palace. They ask him to help with setting fire to more things in the city and to try and free some of the Suldam and like that basically just cause chaos, like make things hard for Elayne. That is his job. And I don't know, like that was basically the purpose of getting his perspective, is so that we could see that he was being asked to do these things, and who knows how that's going to turn out. We also find out that Elayne is having twins though, which is very interesting and a nice little positive note to end her section on. Next up, we have Mat's storyline, which is very intriguing for having such a small percentage of the actual book, although he is relatively equivalent to the other main storylines, so I guess he has a decent portion of the book, but I feel like his is the storyline that I feel the most laser focused on right now, that I am the most interested in. And this is primarily because I love watching his interactions with Tuon, and I love she is an enigma for lots of reasons, because for one, we still don't have a full grasp on Shan culture, so a lot of the ways that she behaves, we don't really know what it means. Like, we can get the sense of if Mat is making a fool of himself or putting his foot in it, but we don't really know why, which is always interesting in those interactions. And we also get the sense that maybe she knows about Mat's memories, not sure about that, but she might know. And they end up like attempting to get to know one another. Mat ends up finding out that by calling her his wife 3 times, he has actually completed his half of the marriage ceremony. So Tuon holds this entire situation in her hands, where if she calls Mat her husband 3 times, then they're married. So there's, at this point, nothing Mat can do about it. Like, Tuon has him in, like, by the throat in whether or not they are going to be married, because he didn't know what he was doing when he did that. But their relationship kind of continues to progress, even though it outwardly doesn't necessarily seem like it is. Like, they start playing stones together, which I always like, because it seems as though Tuon appreciates being challenged in the game and appreciates if Mat is a good player. And so I think that there's an interesting idea to be had there about them playing a strategy game against one another, because in a very, like, real larger sense, that is what they're doing, is playing a strategy game against one another, like, in their lives. And then Mat also takes her shopping, which ends up being an interesting, like, interaction as well. And at the very end of this, when they get back to the traveling show, Tuon has Tuon has put the entire show under her protection, but has made it clear that her protection excludes Mat, which is just funny. Like, I don't exactly know what she's getting at, but she's an enigma, like I said. So I have been really enjoying reading about Mat and Tuon. And the final important thing that happens from that storyline is that Egwene gets stabbed by one of the Suldam because she was the only one that knew the secret that Suldam could be collared as well, because they are women who can learn to channel. That's the only way that you can be a Suldam. So now, like, everyone like Mat knows this secret as well, and he knows that Tuon trained Daman so that she could probably learn to channel as well. And I'm sure that there's going to be some implications for everyone learning that bit of information, because that could upset the entire Shan-Chan order of things. And I think that's all I have to say about Mat. It seems weird that I don't have more to say, but regardless, that was, I think, my favorite storyline in this book. I really enjoyed watching them and their relationship. And then finally, we have Rand, who is basically resting from last book, because we know that there's been barely any time that's passed. Like, no time at all has passed at the start of this book, because what Rand and Nynaeve did, like, is happening right now. And so then Rand is kind of hiding out afterwards with, like, Lan and Nynaeve and his whole posse. I don't know why I just used the word posse, but with Cadsuan and the other Aes Sedai and the Ashaman that he had with him. And so they're kind of just, like, in a place where they don't think that anyone will find them. I think they might be in Murindi? I can't remember whether that's right. But regardless, he needs rest because he literally cleansed the male half of the source, which is quite interesting, and I really did love the ending to Winter's Heart. So I was good with that. Like, I thought it was so cool that they were actually able to do that. And another thing that I find cool is that one observation is made that the male half of the source is so, like, tumultuous that they're not completely convinced that it's clean. Rand is. He feels like he can feel it, but everyone else is like, anything could be hiding in there, because the male half of the source is just chaos. And then we do get Cadsuan perspectives, but she is with Rand in the same location, so she is always an interesting person, like, whose head that we can be in. I always enjoy a Cadsuan perspective just because of the way that she thinks of things and the observations that she makes, and I don't think we're entirely clear on her motivations, even though it seems like her motivations are positive towards Rand, but I still don't think I entirely trust her, even though I really like Cadsuan as a character. And one person that we definitely cannot trust, now we know, is Elsa, who is a green Aes Sedai, I think, who is helping guard Rand's door, and she is basically, like, he's not directly in danger from her right now, but anyone around him is if she thinks that they're a threat, because she just wants him to get to the last battle so that he can be defeated, which was quite a line. The ending of that chapter with her perspective was pretty great, like a mic drop moment. And then the final parts of this book that we get are that Loyal was sent on a mission by Rand, and he has successfully kind of gone and gotten a lot of the way gates guarded so that Trollocs and Shadowspawn can't just come spilling out of a way gate with no one knowing that they're there. And so he is finally back, and Min is very happy to see him. I love Loyal. I was very happy to see him. And when Loyal gets back, so do Davrin Bashir and then Logain. And Rand is very unhappy with the way that things are going at the Black Tower. He's unhappy that Logain and some of the other Ashaman bonded these Aes Sedai because he doesn't want to go to war with the White Tower. And Logain basically informs him that he needs to come back and take authority of the Black Tower back from Mazrim Taim, because Taim is just, like, giving orders left, right, and center. He's the one that's in charge, but he's giving the orders in Rand's name, and nobody really knows what's coming from him and what isn't, and it's all the same to them. So that could be very bad. But at the very end of the book, Rand sends Loyal, Davrin Bashir, and Logain to the Shan-Chan, and the Shan-Chan would want to ally with him, but they want to meet him, and they want him to meet with the Daughter of the Nine Moons. So this raises a lot of questions. Well, actually, it raises one main question, which is, do they want him to meet with Tuon, who has been kidnapped and they don't know where she is? Or is there someone else who is going to become Daughter of the Nine Moons? Or like what's going on there? Because the Seanchan don't have the Daughter of the Nine Moons, so who is Rand going to meet with? And that is a big thing to happen, is if Rand does end up going and allying with the Seanchan. So like I said earlier, I am interested to see how the Seanchan continue to mesh with the people of this land, and it seems like a lot of alliances are going to have to be formed, and it's interesting. So I think that that's all I have to say, and my remarks from the start of the video just kind of are echoed here, where I talked about the things that I found interesting in this book, but I still don't really feel like we got an ending. So 2 stars. There are still things to like. I'm still enjoying the series as a whole, and I still have faith in the final 4 books. So I am hopefully going to read the next book next month, and I will enjoy it more than I did Crossroads of Twilight. But I am through the slog, so I am ready to get into the home stretch. If you've made it until the end of the video, thank you so very much for watching this far. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please like if you liked this video. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!